Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin session 1. The session theme is Green Hydrogen Policy, Regulations and Standards. It's an honor to have among us Dr. Anil Kakodkar ji, FNAE and former chairman of Atomic Energy Commission and Secretary to Government of India, Department of Atomic Energy. Dr. Kakodkar has been felicitated with all 3 Padma Awards, as well as the Apex State Awards for governments of Goa, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh, besides numerous other recognitions. You can see his brief resume on the screen. Dr. Kakodkar will be chairing the session 1. The expert speakers for this session are Professor Indranil Manna, again, President INAE, Ms. Gauri Singh, Deputy Director General, International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, Mr. Jonas Moberg, Chief Executive Officer of Green Hydrogen Organization, Geneva. Mr. Moberg is also a member of our GHIC steering committee. He will be joining online from Egypt. And the last speaker for this session is Mr. Sarbojit, Manager of Partnerships, Clean Energy Ministerial, SEM, Headquarters, Paris. He will also be joining virtually. Over to you, Dr. Kakodkar, sir.
Thank you. Let me first of all express my gratitude for this opportunity to be a part of this very important meeting being organized jointly by ISA and INAE. I know time is always under pressure, but let me make some initial remarks and then I would request colleagues on the panel to take the discussion of the session forward. Now, this session is devoted primarily to the relevance of green hydrogen, the policy issues related to green hydrogen, and the regulations and standards related to green hydrogen. By way of relevance, of course, it's all clear. If India has to realize both its development and growth in economy, as well as reaching the decarbonization target, the net zero target by 2070, the energy requirements of industry are a fairly large component. Because of this transition, it's hard to put a number, but it could be anywhere between 20 to 30% of the total energy. And that total energy itself could be 4 times more than what it is today because we are a developing economy. So essentially the industry component, requirement of industry energy is very large. It is it's a large fraction of today's energy consumption, and we have to talk about that fraction for the much larger energy consumption that we will see in future. And of course, the industry requirement will come partly from electricity, of course, but still, as was mentioned by Mr. Bhalla, you would need a significant part of that component coming in as a molecule to generate heat or to be part of the process. And in the context of clean energy, we'll have to replace the traditional feedstocks to hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives, and that's the challenge. Now, to me, it looks that the production of green hydrogen Uh, there are, in terms of cost, you need to bring down the input cost, and it's mostly energy, and that dominates. And then, of course, the cost of the equipment required has to be brought down. And there is a kind of, the way the technologies which are available today, they are maybe in terms of capital cost, cheaper than the technologies which are likely to be available in future, but their efficiency is not all that large. Some of you might have read a news item about a week back that the ceramic technologies, the solid oxide fuel cells or solid oxide electrolyzers, whichever way one looks at it, they have operated on a large scale with a sustained efficiency well in excess of 80-85%. So you can imagine the gain that comes, and that's what would make the hydrogen cheaper. So the point is, while we have to get on with available technologies, we need to keep space for new technologies to come in line, because many times otherwise the existing technologies become a barrier for entry of new technologies. And but for reduction in cost of hydrogen, that's absolutely important. And going beyond electrolyzers, of course, as Dr. Mathur alluded to, the thermal processes for direct splitting of water, they are likely to be even more energy efficient, and those are also on the anvil. So this, we'll have to manage this economic transition and the technology transition all together. So this is the first point that I wish to make. Talking about hard to abate industries, in fact, what I hear from colleagues in atomic energy is that there is literally a beeline of industry for setting up captive nuclear power plants, essentially to decarbonize their product. And this seems to be not one or two, but seems to be a fairly large number. And of course, DAE is working out how to realize that objective. But the point I'm making is that the need for energy transition in industry has perhaps become much more urgent than the 2070 target that we have for the country. And that is something related with the competitiveness of Indian industry in the global market. And so there is this timeliness, which also is, I think, very, very important, and we must make sure that we don't lag behind on that count. So in that context, sometimes I wonder, because of course Dr. Bhalla has gone, but we have defined green hydrogen as hydrogen produced from renewable energy. I would put it to you that looking at the extended energy requirements for the country in a developed India, which would require maybe, as I said, 3.5 to 4 times more energy than what we consume today, and industrial requirement easily being 25-30% of that. And then you look at the total renewable energy available in the country, and you will find the number game actually does not match, or it barely matches. And if that be so, then why can't we have just the definition of the carbon footprint as a sufficient criteria for defining green hydrogen? And then you can bring in nuclear as a source and enlarge that basket for producing green hydrogen. I think it's absolutely important for the long-term energy security in the country. And I think some attention should be paid to this aspect. finally, I also believe that green hydrogen, for example, refineries are today the industries which probably use hydrogen to the maximum. They refine the methane or natural gas to produce hydrogen for their consumptive use. But there are processes where the carbon, instead of going out as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, you get that carbon in the form of a solid, either nanotubes or different other forms of carbon, which doesn't contribute to the carbon dioxide emission. And I think even that, as long as it doesn't lead to emission, but that carbon is available as solid, should be eligible for green hydrogen definition, in my view. And that may be even cheaper. And finally, that carbon is a valuable material. So today, we look upon steel, aluminum, plastic as materials of choice in different segments of industry or consumer uses. I think carbon is a wonder material, and we should create demand for carbon as a material of choice. And when that happens, then actually it will cross-subsidize the production of hydrogen without the carbon dioxide footprint. And I think these technologies are just around the corner, and I think we should probably pay attention to that. And so I think our policies should get geared not just to short term. Short term is, of course, important because we can't miss out on short term. There's no way to reach long term if you miss on the short term. But the policy should also recognize the long-term prospects and make sure that we steer this transition in the right direction. So I think I will stop here and go to the members of the panel for their remarks. And after that, we can get into a QA. And if there is time, then I could surely come back again. So may I request the first panelist, Professor Indranil Manna, President of INAE, to make his remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kakodkar. I certainly don't consider myself to be an expert at all in this subject domain, but as the president of INAE and also as an academic, having a deep interest in the overall sustainability, I certainly would like to offer some of my comments, which are going to be more philosophical in nature than truly technological. I'm sure there are domain experts who are going to follow me. They will have much more relevant comments to make. The first point that I want to make is that if we, imagine ourselves taking a time capsule, go back to a large distance in the past when life began, nature ensured a very nice balance and there was no crisis at all. So whatever carbon dioxide was emitted, either from human exhalation or any other sources, maybe volcanic eruption, would be captured and converted back to give back oxygen into the system. Now, that was, if you just compare two numbers, per oxygen molecule emission, the efficiency is more than 25%, I think 26 or something like that. Percent efficiency is very efficient process. But if you compare this with the efficiency of conversion of energy from solar to chemical, this is less than 2%. Still, there was no crisis in the nature at that point of time. And now we come back to the present scenario. We all are aware that CO2 emission has caused such a huge crisis that the whole world today cannot afford to ignore the major threat that it is posing. If you then look at the modern lifestyle, there's no life without steel, cement, and various other artificial materials that we need for our existence. Emissions happen because the natural resources that we lay hand to, for example, iron oxide, you need a reducing agent to bring the cationic value out of that, so the iron value of that. Similarly, when you want to construct, there is no choice beyond cement, as on today at least, and you get cement from mostly the carbonates, and moment you calcine, you emit a lot of carbon dioxide. And there are, of course, alternatives or certain processes which actually can reduce emission, but there is no complete substitution of those. So for all the artificial materials that we use, in fact, I must also mention that if we are careless, many of these resources will again go back into the same state from which again you have to win back, and if you try to win back, again you'll emit carbon dioxide. Now, Dr. Kakodkar just mentioned about the possibility of production of electricity through the fuel cell route. The most benign and the most efficient, at least scientifically possible, would be the oxide fuel cell, which he mentioned. Theoretically, it's predicted more than 60%, depending on the temperature and oxygen potential we are talking about at that stage. It actually can go beyond 66 or 70%. And I wasn't aware, I just heard that industries have now proven even to go beyond 80%. Now, that's most benign because its reaction is between hydrogen and oxygen, or hydroxyl and oxide ions, and producing electrons and moisture as the end product. Nothing can be more benign than that. But this is known for over 100 years, but still not yet fully realized. Only examples are coming out where we are seeing the possibilities or the potential. So to realize what is scientifically predicted and proven into commercial activity, which is affordable, is a long way. Now, hydrogen today, we are so keen because of mainly 4 reasons. Number 1, transportation. Number 2, as a source of energy. Number 3, to take care of various processes that I mentioned. I just mentioned 2, but there are many other chemical processes where we are heavily dependent on carbon. So, I mean, to come away from carbon-dependent technologies is one of the major intentions. And then domestic uses, heating, cooling, and so on and so forth. We heard already in the morning inaugural session that generation, transportation, storage, safety, security, these are key issues to be overcome. Now, the point is, if we want to move ahead and realize our target in this country and globally, complete carbon neutral is a long way off, but even the target set in our own country by 2030 to have hydrogen production capacity, which can go all the way up to 450, in terms of energy value, 450 gigawatt hour. It's a long way. There are many, many challenges to be overcome. So what it requires is a very well-concerted effort, starting, of course, from the policy-making step, but implementation in industries through incentives, through various other measures, and also awareness in the society, educational institutions, curriculum, research investments. So in all such cases, I think we cannot afford to lag behind, and we must move ahead at a very fast pace with new research directions, innovative ideas, and at the same time, various incentive schemes so that the whole thing actually moves in the right direction. I think I'll just stop here without taking any further time, and I'm sure there are domain experts who probably will add true value to this entire discussion. We can always come back later. Thank you.
So we can get views from all the panels and then get the discussion, right? So can I move on to Madam Gauri Singh?
Thank you, Dr. Kakodkar, and thank you for inviting me to this very interesting session here today with ISA and INAE. After listening to the inaugural session and the various information that got shared, I would like to take some time to give a global outlook on where and how much we think that by 2050, what's the kind of percentage that green hydrogen will occupy in the total final energy consumption mix. So at IRENA, we do outlooks every year on the energy transition outlook, and our assessment is that globally by 2050, we are looking at about 10 to 12% of the energy mix coming from hydrogen. And of that, we are expecting about 90% to come from green hydrogen. Just to also put it in the context that currently the sector that in energy transition that is doing the best is the electrification. And we expect that by 2050, we will have a domination of electricity as being the major carrier of energy with more than 50%. But the one sector that's not doing well is the end use sectors. And there is a lot that needs to be done. And we also heard from Dr. Kakodkar about the need to look at how industries will decarbonize much more actively. I just want to take us through the approaches that different governments are taking in terms of putting their policies and strategies together for green hydrogen. Let me start with the IRA, which is came out and attracted a lot of attention with it being a pure industrial policy to get green hydrogen going, and the objective being that to get the cost of green hydrogen in the US down to about $1.5 per kilo. And the intention being that production tax credit facilities would be given to all those facilities that commence construction by the end of 2032. So this has naturally led to a lot of enthusiasm in USA. We have to keep in mind that out of the 100 million tons of gray hydrogen that are currently being produced in the world, USA consumes almost 13% of it. So it's the second largest consumer of hydrogen. So almost 75% of the players that have shown interest and are starting to work in this under the IRA set of incentives are existing hydrogen players who are looking at how they can convert their processes to green hydrogen to take advantage of this very attractive incentive that has been given on the supply side. It is also expected that states like Texas, Florida, California, which are already very active in renewable energy and in promoting renewable energy, are the ones that will take the major share of these incentives. And the existing renewable energy players, of that, about 24% of those have also shown interest. So greenfield developers are very few. But the expectation is that with the given level of interest and very good level of incentives that has been put out in the policies to promote a green hydrogen, there should be a good breakthrough that we can expect to come from the US. In the United Kingdom, they've taken a slightly different approach. The approach that has been taken in United Kingdom is more about incentivizing business models. So a viability gap funding is actually being offered to producers of hydrogen. And their intention is that the viability gap funding is there to make them competitive with the high carbon hydrogen sources that are currently being used. In US, the way it is defined is different from how green hydrogen is being defined in India, which is it's being defined more as a low carbon hydrogen. And what is also being done simultaneously is that just to boost the demand for this low carbon hydrogen that gets produced, there is also a standard that has been set for all the existing end-use consumers that they need to slowly move towards the more low carbon sources of hydrogen. So there is both a push and a pull factor that has been built into the policy in the UK. Also, what they have put in place is a renewable transport fuel obligation, which means that even it encourages the production and use of renewable fuels that would not damage the environment. So using both standards to create the demand, but also a viability gap funding on the supply side to get the producers of low carbon hydrogen moving in the right direction. In EU, I think, which is one of the most well-known cases where they have a Fit for 55 strategy for renewables. Their focus has actually been a very comprehensive policy making has been put in place, which promotes investment support. And as we heard from Mr. Bhalla, that there is still a lot of reluctance in the financing sector to promote, to support and to finance projects of green hydrogen. So there is a clear built-in investment support mechanisms that have been put in place. There's also support that has been given for production of hydrogen and also creating of a clear demand and a hydrogen market. Investment, public sector investment for creating the infrastructure that is needed for whether it's pipelines or for transporting, that is being put in place. Very importantly, there's a lot of focus on research and development and also on international cooperation. As we know that in Europe, there is a limitation of how much renewables can come online in Europe itself. So naturally, they're looking at the North Sea very actively, but they're also looking at Africa, where they have collaboration to use the surplus solar energy for converting it into green hydrogen and shipping it and through pipelines moving it to Europe. So that's the kind of planning that they have in Europe. I'll just take a couple of more examples. In Japan, very interestingly, Japan being again having constraint on space, and it is largely a country of where they import their energy from various countries. The big aspect is the collaboration between large industries and METI, which is their Ministry for Economy, Trade and Industry, and they have put out a green innovation fund to partner with large industries to come up with solutions that can reduce carbon dioxide. So, for example, Nippon Steel just last December has come out using blast furnaces, because in steel making, through the electric arc route, there is of course a possibility of bringing in green energy. But Nippon Steel has come out with a 33% reduction of carbon dioxide emissions from the blast furnace itself. And there is now a consortium that's taking this development further, using hydrogen for directly reducing iron ore. Further, there was a very interesting large pilot carried out. I'll just take one more minute. By the Kawasaki, that actually transported liquefied hydrogen from Australia to Japan. So these are the kind of innovative approaches between the ministry and industry using innovation fund that are being really pushed forward. So let me just end it here to say that every country actually has to look at what are the strengths that they can bring into their policy framework, and then work on that. Thank you.
Let's move on to Mr. Moberg is joining us online. And I think we are somewhat hard pressed for time. So keep track of time. And please go ahead and make your observations.
Thank you so much, sir. And hello, everyone.
I'm not able to hear you. You're on mute, perhaps.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I don't think I'm on mute.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
You can hear me. Wonderful. Can you see me as well?
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, that's very good. Well, hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me along this morning. And very best greetings and appreciation to Dr. Mathur, Secretary Bala, Mridula, all of you, Gauri. It's wonderful. Let me start by some of the good news. I think that the good news is that while we have this morning identified a number of technical challenges, by and large, more or less, we know what the pathways, the transition pathways can look like in a number of our industries. We had a very poor understanding of this only 3, 4, 5 years ago. We have come a long way. Also, on the good news is we've talked about the need for renewable energy. Let us keep in mind just how quickly the capacity is growing. Last year, we added 500 gigawatts globally. That is a doubling compared to the previous year. So all of that renewable energy that we need, we are seeing how the market and how we are responding and increasing the capacity very quickly. Now, I've got to say, I'm not sure you, but the presentation that we heard from Secretary Bala this morning is an absolute treat. There are not many places around the world where we're seeing the kind of leadership that he, MNRE, and everyone is illustrating within the mission in India. Gauri spoke a little bit about the IRA and Europe. The fact is also that it is taking a very long time to finalize these things. So on the positive is also just how quickly things are now being executed, moving in India itself. If we add up what we know about not plans, but execution amongst, in particular, some of the bigger actors within India, we get to 5.2 million tons of green ammonia by 27 or early 28. That is an absolutely astonishing number. And of course, we also heard from Secretary Bala then moving ahead towards a very significant number of hydrogen, 7.6% million tons by 2030. So all of these things are hugely positive. Now, let us look a little bit at the challenges, because there are many. One is that despite these incentives in India and in a number of other countries, we are still struggling to see the demand to take off. We're still struggling to find the customers for our early products. And we've seen it a little bit in some markets where it is in effect easier to pass on what you might call a green premium. We have seen this, for example, in Europe when it comes to steel making. That's not maybe a huge market, but we're seeing it because primarily, if you build a car, a luxury car that costs maybe $50,000, the steel content is relatively limited in value. We're talking about, if you double the steel cost, that will only have an impact of $1 or a couple of $100 at the end price. So you can, in a sense, pass on that green premium. In a number of other markets, this is difficult to do. We are seeing there's been a lot of hope, for example, of the early use of green ammonia for bunker fuel in the marine transport sector. But again, this is a very price-sensitive sector, and a number of the ship owners, excuse me, are now clearly struggling to make the numbers work, no matter how desirable that is. That leads to the first conclusion here, which is further efforts are needed. And of course, it's very easy to say, well, if we had more carbon pricing, that would solve it. I think we know that in most sectors, we're going to struggle to find agreements for carbon pricing. We might see it in maritime, might see it in one or two others, but blanket global carbon pricing is unlikely to come forward. We therefore need, in policy terms, to look at, if you like, sector-specific and various forms of proxy measures, if you like, to drive that demand in short of blanket general carbon pricing measures, even if we all see some in, as I've said, pockets. So a key aspect at the moment is, yes, we are seeing the production increasing very quickly in a couple of markets, India being one. It is not happening as fast as we had hoped in Europe and the US, for example. But we are seeing a global struggle to find the customers, to make the numbers work, if you like. Secretary Bala spoke quite a lot about incentives, and just like in India, a number of other countries, in the US and a number of others, there is indeed a strong focus on incentives. I believe that in the coming months and years, there will also be a further need to look at what else can be done to support demand. And let me also lastly say that when it comes to demand, it is not just a matter of the green premium or price. There are also a number of other things. We're building new supply chains. It's about finance. It's about insurance. It is about the enabling environment in terms of legislative efforts and pricing. All of that is to say that it's great with everything that is going on, but even if we have the technical solutions, even if we're seeing the capacity, there are a huge number of not least governance aspects here that urgently needs addressing for renewable green hydrogen to be able to take off. And on that, my last point would be there has been a number of efforts in many countries that, if you like, in creating standards, are giving different ways of preferential treatment to fossil fuel-based hydrogen. And it's done by, for example, not requiring a proper accounting of methane leakage if you have hydrogen from fossil fuels together with carbon capture. So what we also need to do as part of that enabling environment is to work extremely hard at making sure that we account emissions properly, that it is genuinely low carbon hydrogen, and that we allow green hydrogen its fair chance to compete with fossil fuel-based hydrogen. And I'm pleased to say here, the Indian government tried very, very hard during the G20 and worked with the Clean Energy Ministerial and others that we'll hear from in a minute. But it didn't always manage to bring other countries along, and we need to continue with a significant focus to really make sure that many of these standards give the renewable a fair chance. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's a perfect introduction to this intervention by the next panelist, Mr. Sarbojit Pal. Floor is yours, please.
Dr. Kakodkar, and thank you, Jonas, for the nice segue. I am Sarbojit Pal from the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat, and I just wanted to check, can you hear me in the room?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I am Sarbojit from the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat and support the work of the Clean Energy Ministerial's Hydrogen Initiative, amongst other different initiatives. For those who are not aware, the Clean Energy Ministerial, or CEM as we call it, is a government-to-government collaboration platform that focuses on one thing only, that's the acceleration of global clean energy deployment. Launched in 2010, the CEM currently has 29 participating members, and India has been a founding member of the CEM, having hosted the Ministerial 2 times, including last year in July, alongside its G20 Energy Transitions Ministerial meeting. And in addition to the annual ministerial meetings, the CEM members come together to focus on key clean energy solutions that need urgent focus to expedite their deployment. Hydrogen has been at the forefront of the CEM discussions for the last 5 years, and the CEM's hydrogen initiative with 5 co-leading governments and over 22 participating countries has become a leading global initiative for international collaboration on the topic. And having been closely involved with these international discussions for the last 7 years, I can only convey to you that the immense international urgency I have seen on the clean energy, on this specific clean energy solution is tremendous. The pace at which we have seen countries moving from hydrogen economy roadmaps to industrial strategy is unprecedented and both fantastic as it is scary. It's fantastic because the growth of renewables story really and the related electrification that we have seen in the last decade has been tremendous. The possibility of decarbonized hydrogen, which has the potential to unlock the challenging decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sectors, such as heavy transportation and heavy industry, is possible now. And it's also scary because we now need to move at incredible pace, taking along industry, economy, to meet the clean energy transition needs with the aim of global net zero by 2050, with countries having goals all the way till 2070. But some estimates suggest that a lack of international collaboration could push back these ambitions by over 50 years. We sadly don't have this option given our climate ambitions. Low carbon hydrogen will have to play a critical role if we have to meet any of these goals. As Dr. Singh outlined, the various activities that many governments and regions are taking towards achieving these goals. And Mr. Bhalla earlier in his opening remarks gave a thorough overview of India's plans. What is clear from all these messages is that this acceleration of hydrogen deployment will not be possible if we do not take an all-of-economy approach and one that is internationally integrated. We have seen that the work that we are doing on industrial decarbonization for sectors such as steel and cement, for instance, will greatly benefit from early clarity on hydrogen standards. And transportation strategies perhaps need to be looked at in sync with electrification and infrastructure growth if we are to make progress for hydrogen uptake within the transportation sector. India has been quite a leader in the last, 2.5, 3 years with the development of its own hydrogen mission. And I can only say from the international scoping that the mission stands out as a pretty unique, mission strategy, which looks at the entire supply chain from the upstream all the way to the downstream end use for hydrogen as well. And this is even more pertinent today, given the fact that what we are seeing is that there has been a lot of stress which countries have put on production-linked goals and targets. The estimates from the Global Hydrogen Review, the SEM Hydrogen Initiative requested the International Energy Agency to develop. Indicates that as far as production is concerned, by 2030, we have almost targets of 30 million tons of hydrogen committed for green hydrogen committed for production. However, if we see the deployment targets, it's less than 10% of these production-linked targets. So there is an urgent need to start looking at the demand side aspects, and I think this is something that some of the previous speakers have also identified. And it is a pleasure for me to kind of convey that many of the governments are actually coming together within the Clean Energy Ministerial to start looking at the potential for a collective global ambition on hydrogen, green hydrogen, clean hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen offtake goals. And India can greatly benefit from this international collaboration because India's hydrogen strategy is deeply embedded in the global discourse. And while many other countries around the world are looking at hydrogen of all different colors, India has been very clear that it is looking at one option, making it through production of hydrogen through clean energy solutions. And it should also therefore reflect strongly on the potential for demand as well, and a greater understanding and clarification from India with regards to the potential industries that could benefit from green hydrogen demand could be very valuable. Within the Clean Energy Ministerial, we have also launched last year in India the International Hydrogen Trade Forum, which has right now over 16 member governments who are working on mutual recognition of clean hydrogen standards to initiate the process of a trade. And we are looking to see how we can also kind of work with the government of India to have their involvement at the multilateral level beyond the bilateral discussions which are currently underway. So I think I will stop here, and then I look forward to any further queries and questions that the floor may have. Thank you, Dr. Kakodkar.
My panelist colleagues for being very efficient on time. We started, I think we gained some time, although we are behind time as per the reference timetable which we all have. Mrudula had done a lot of homework in giving me several questions to ask to each one of you. I'm afraid there is no time because we have a whole day to organize. I just want to raise a generic question, not to any specific panel member, but anyone who wants to take it, or even anyone other. And I suggest we close the session there and move on to the next item, which is very important, lunch. But the point is the following. It's clear that there is intense global action, there is intense action in all countries in terms of managing this very important challenge before us. We also look at, the policies, a framework for incentivization in terms of making progress towards this objective. The only point I wish to make is, while designing an incentive structure is a very challenging activity by itself, but it's important to me, the way it looks to me, it's important that the prescriptions and incentives should be more generic and not made technology specific. They should be rather objective specific. You want to achieve some cost targets, you want to achieve some carbon emission or limitation targets and things like that, and allow the technologies to flourish. Whichever technology comes at different points of time, let that come. And that way, I think this transition probably will move faster. I know this is more difficult to implement compared to the way we do traditionally, but I just want to throw this point of view to audience. If any of the panel members would like to comment, or anyone else would like to comment, but otherwise we'll close the session. Any on this specific issue? Anyone? Specific issue of subsidies? Yeah. No, I think Mr. Moberg also has raised the hand. Paul has raised the hand. Yes, please go ahead.
Is that for me to go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Look, I think that no one would disagree with the general assertion that we should allow, we should be general and allow technologies to flourish. That's clear. So far, I agree. What is at the same time very clear is that we built our economies around very, very carbon intensive fossil fuel use. And if we're going to allow low carbon energy pathways to flourish, we need to give them a fair chance. And at the moment, there are a number of efforts underway to essentially encourage, lend credibility to hydrogen with very significant associated emissions. And that, I think, is...
Can I interrupt you for a minute? I think that is not what I meant. What I meant was of course, when we're talking about emerging technologies which all qualify for the emission targets. And within that, allow technologies to flourish. I'm not saying any technology. So I just want to clarify that. Please go ahead.
In that case, I think we all very much agree. And yes, sir, for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Pal?
And yes, Dr. Gagut, so I think, it's a very pertinent point, and it's a point that, we have been discussing also on the international sphere, where, not all countries have are endowed with all the different technologies. So there is from domestic priorities for many different governments, there is also a bit of a need to be technology agnostic, so that we are able to kind of achieve the collective goals while still kind of balancing the domestic priorities. In that context, to just give you an example, this is absolutely accurate what you mentioned, Dr. Kakodkar, that we need to probably take a very balanced approach and on the merits of the different advantages that we have for the different types of sustainable fuels that we are looking forward to. Right now, of course, there is a discussion today we are having on hydrogen, but we have seen within the Clean Energy Ministerial a lot of discussion also on fuels such as biofuels, on which as well, there has been a lot of stress, and potentially other synthetic fuels as we look forward. In that context, to be able to kind of have this comparison and have this discussion in a more kind of scientific fashion, on the international stage, we have been also kind of working to develop something which is called the Future Fuels Accelerator, which looks at all these different kind of sustainable fuels of the future in combination. And you would be happy to know that this discussion and the framing of this discussion actually got initiated last year during India's G20 presidency, when we organized the Clean Energy Ministerial in India. And Brazil is taking forward with their G20 presidency this year to have this discussion on a more even footing for all fuels, looking at the costs and benefits and the advantages and disadvantages that these fuels have, from particularly what you started off with, Dr. Kakodkar. It's not the green or the color of fuel that is important, but the fact that the carbon intensity of each of these fuels need to be kind of evaluated, and that is what we are aiming to have this collective global discourse later this year. And hope that it will set the stage for all these technologies which are available to us. We are able to benefit from these technologies based on their true advantages and disadvantages. On that, however, needless to say, hydrogen does stand a very, very strong stand compared to all the other kind of carbon intensities that we have already seen for other fuels.
Thank you. Yes. Here.
No, I just want to make a point, because the cost to the nation, we should be also aware of the cost to the nation. And there's another cost when we transit from fossil fuel energy to green energy, which is a national cost or social cost. Like, for example, just imagine that we will switch over from thermal coal power plants to green energy power plants, and there'll be so many jobs will be lost. So that's why the new concept of just transition has come, that when we are transiting, we should not look only at the cost of the transit, but the cost, associated costs. So those costs have to be also considered in understanding, how much it really costs to move from one paradigm to another paradigm. We shouldn't forget that.
No, absolutely. But the question is, all countries have given their net zero targets.
Yeah.
So this is within that. So
I was
that should address that.
talking from a cost point of view.
Yeah. Madam, you want
so
to?
subsidies you might have to give there also, not only subsidies for the fair chance, as it says, to the new technology developers. These have to be given also.
No, absolutely. No, my point was, we're talking about, say, in this hall, we're talking about only green hydrogen. Now, even in green hydrogen, there are n number of technologies. Some may be ready, some may come after a couple of years.
So that point is very.
Some may come that. Now, the question is, we should devise policies which are technology agnostic.
So that point is very.
That was all I'm trying to say. And because I think, implementing these things are difficult. Yeah. And so you tend to specify this technology, that technology, and then actually this becomes a block for new technology. There are several cases. We have no time to talk about it, but Madam, please.
I just wanted to add, Dr. Kakodkar, I think that's pretty much what most of the countries are doing, that they are not actually specifying which technologies, but looking at maybe things like, for example, Mr. Bhalla just told us about the amount of carbon emission that they're willing to look at to define green hydrogen. And but you will see that in most of the countries, it's a cost parameter. How do you reduce cost, and also defining what is the kind of emission that they are willing to live with to define a low carbon pathway for producing hydrogen. So for example, in France, they will definitely be looking at nuclear, because that's and that is actually a big discussion that's happening in Europe, where they are not agreeing on the word renewable, but they want the word clean energy, defining on how much emissions come in. So that's probably the future.
You want to final
Slightly, no, not really. I mean, a different perspective, Dr. Kakodkar. One part is that green or blue or whatever, hydrogen is a very important component and we have to pursue following the global standards. No two thoughts about it. But I'm posing as an engineer another facet of the whole issue. We produce globally about 1,800 million tons of steel. For every ton of steel, we produce about 2 tons of CO2. Substituting carbon as a reducing agent for winning iron from Fe2O3 has not yet been realized nowhere in the world. And it's not very much visible either in the horizon. So there are certain scientific solutions which actually have to be not only proposed, but practiced and demonstrated. So mitigation is the strategy that we are following throughout the world. But substitution is not necessarily in the horizon somewhere. Without cement, you can't, steel and cement, you can't make any big structures for the society. So these aspects also need to be, and India being the largest population in the world today, also the youngest, consumes about 22% or so of the energy that we use for life. So there'll be huge demand and we need substitutes, but there has to be certain scientific solutions as well. That's all.
Yeah. No, but I think as we heard during this discussion that somebody said, and I think that is true, that I think the technologies for kind of getting away from carbon to produce steel are very much on the horizon. On a large scale, it's likely to come.
I'll talk about
it. But agreed, this is, well, that may be one example. There are many other such possibilities and there are many other technological hurdles that need to be addressed to make this transition possible. I think this discussion is only how to make sure that we are more efficient in facilitating that transition. Now, I think whatever time gained, I have completely lost again. So I cannot extend this session any further. So I wish to thank all the panelists. I wish to thank all audience who are in this session. And finally, I wish to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And with that, it's back to you, Mridula.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Session Chair Kakodkar sir, and all the expert panelists. These pointers are very important, and we are preparing a guidance document or proceedings which will come out of this the brainstorming session or seminar, and we will release it as soon as it's ready. I would like, as we conclude this session, we would like to express our gratitude to the session chair and the panelist. Can I request the session chair to please give souvenirs to the panelist? And we'll keep the ones for the online when we meet next time. We keep meeting them all the time.
There should be a way of virtually reaching them in reality.
Yes, yes, technology agnostic, yes. I wish we could just put them as attachment and send them by email, but they meet us so frequently, so it's not an issue. We'll hand it over to them.
Thanks for the kind thoughts.
So, could we have this souvenir? Professor Kakodkar can give to Dr. Manna, please. And Ms. Gauri.
And your thing will come virtually.
The rest are online, so we can't help it. But Jonas, I promise, and Sarbojit, next time. We are meeting soon. I mean, we are doing the workshop with them. I mean, very soon, as DG pointed out.
Absolutely.
So we'll break for lunch now, and we convene at 2:30. The lunch is being served in the lobby outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.